And Dr. Wolf, how would you characterize the new government of Israel?
I think actually the new government of Israel is best understood sociologically. I would call it the government of the outsiders to Zionism, or the outsiders to Israel's foundation. For many years, when you had governments from the right, governments who represented the groups and societies that were outsiders to the initial foundation of Israel, they always had a supposed crutch with them. They always had parties that represented Israel's traditional founders, the more secular, socialist, labor, and their descendants. This is the first government that doesn't have it. Which means that it could go either way. It could definitely be, and there is a fear and scenario, and I share in that fear. It is a government that could be destructive, that could not appreciate how precious it is what Zionism built and what the state of Israel is and how important it's been for the Jewish people, or with the outsiders finally being in control from their perspective, they might actually finally go through the process of what it means to be a responsible government. It is touch and go. Both these scenarios are possible, and a lot of people are fighting to make sure that one happens and not the other.
Obviously, it's a coalition government. Is it a coalition government which you think the majority of the population of Israel are ready to accept?
It's a coalition government that, like all coalition governments, represents the majority of Israel's citizens. There is fear among those who are not represented in this government. There are far, far fewer women in this government. This is something that I certainly fear and do not appreciate. There have been concerns with respect to LGBTQ rights, Jewish pluralism. On the other hand, there's more representatives to, as I said, to the outsiders of Zionism, Jews historically who come from Arab and Muslim lands and their descendants, ultra-Orthodox Jews. So it is more representative in certain aspects, less representatives in others, but it does represent a majority of Israel's citizens.
I mean, some of the people forming going to have ministerial roles like Itamar Ben-Gvir or Ms. Spotnich, I mean, they are people who have, frankly, racist views, do they not, as sort of Jewish absolutists?
They definitely, yes, they are definitely very right wing. They do represent, like in many other countries, about 5-10% of the population. In a coalition government, they're often able to exact greater power. And this is really where the kind of the balance and the touch and go situation is. Benjamin Netanyahu, and again, contrary to the image that he is some kind of crazy right-wing warmonger. Very few people are aware that during his time, the number of Jews and Arabs who died as a result of violent conflict has been the lowest in the conflict's history. So the question is, what will triumph? Netanyahu's well-known and by now established tendency for care in the employment of power, a sense for de-escalation, or the tendency of some of his right-wing partners to engage in actions and views that might actually promote violence.
But this does mean that the expansion of settlements on the West Bank is going to continue, and that is something uh, condemned by most of the international community.
Perhaps there's actually amazingly no necessary correlation between whether a government is right wing or left wing and whether settlements get built. A lot of it has to do with many other forces. The Netanyahu government, under, with the Obama's American president, built the least settlements. Ehud Barak built some of the most settlements because he thought he was just about to make peace. But the more important issue is, as much as I abhor the settlement project and view it as Israel's most wasteful project, it is not the reason we don't have peace. The only reason we don't have peace, the only reason we never, and it's only ever been the only reason, is the Arab and especially the Palestinian rejection of the Jewish right to self-determination in any borders and in any part of the land. When that ends, I can assure you the Jewish people will elect any prime minister from the right or left who will say yes to partition and will enable the existence of a Palestinian state. We just need the Palestinians to finally say yes to a Jewish state, something that is yet to be done.
And a final question, does becoming prime minister again, I think for the sixth time, mean that Mr. Netanyahu's legal problems, the prosecutions, go away?
No, absolutely not. As I'm sure you know, under a parliamentary system, those are two separate elements. You can only separate them in a presidential system, so they will actually continue in parallel. He will continue to be prime minister, and the trial will continue in parallel. It is, I think, given all the bad choices, it's the best one in the sense that at the end of the day, all our legal systems are based on the assumption that one is innocent until proven guilty. That assumption holds for Netanyahu as well. And the only way really to keep going, if you don't want to give too much power to the legal system to prevent a prime minister from ruling, then is to allow the prime minister to be elected and in parallel to allow the trial to continue.